Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Raw Food Health Show. My name is Paul, and I've been eating a raw vegan diet for almost 30 years. And the majority of that's been 100% raw vegan. And my health today is wonderful. My health throughout this time has been wonderful. I monitor my blood work to make sure it's working for me. I also look at the non-dietary aspects of health to make sure I'm doing well. And I'm learning as I go along, and I'm teaching as I go along. I have found that helping people that are healing from disease and sicknesses, the raw vegan diet is a tremendous benefit in helping many conditions. And if somebody's just looking to eat better or live healthier, a raw vegan diet can work. But I also found some people that aren't doing it the right way. And just like anything, there's a right way and a wrong way to do everything. And some people have run into trouble over the years or didn't give it a long enough try and went back to eating either cooked food or animal foods and so on. Well, I'm living proof that you can do this long term if that's your desire. And as far as I know, I have a tremendous amount of energy compared to other people that are out there. And I also know that this diet's working to accomplish my goals and not getting a reoccurrence of a disease that I suffered from, ulcerative colitis and Crohn's disease. There's still no cure for this. It's a deadly disease that people continue to suffer with. But you just have to know what you're doing. Well, because of the media today, they're try to block, when you talk about cures and healing and all this, they try to block you, and they successfully do block a lot of people. So hopefully this message is getting to the right people today. But there are even people out there that promote a vegan diet that do not consider the benefits of the raw food diet. And often people might talk about the myths of alternative health or a certain type of diet that says to claim everything. Nothing will claim everything. So we can all have a story of somebody who died eating raw foods, or a story of somebody who died who was a vegan. There are many people that died, obviously, of eating the standard American diet, eating beans and rice and steak and chicken and all these other different things. People are dying all the time. But what I'm interested in is how can people prevent disease, prevent or prolong death, and also at the same time improve the quality of their life. And I'm applying what worked for me, and I work with a good amount of people that have had this situation happen to them. Well, today on the show, I'm going to go look at an interview with a popular vegan author who was kind of saying that the raw food diet had no benefits. And then I want to look at an article written by a nutritional therapist. First time I heard that term. I've heard nutritionist and I heard nutrition, blah, 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 but I've never, nutritional therapist. Apparently that's somebody who's helping people with their food struggles or ideas. So we're going to look at that article as well and look at the negative thoughts or ideas people have about the raw food diet. And I want to discuss some of these things. So let's go here and look at this YouTube page of a fellow named Dr. McDougall. And we're going to look at what was said or what him and his wife were being interviewed. Dr. McDougall wrote many books about the vegan diet, and he's a very popular vegan doctor, but he was questioned about raw foods in part of this interview. This is a much longer interview. I'll put a link below to the full interview. But we're going to go right to this part here where we're going to talk about the raw food diet. Obviously, this is not Dr. McDougall. She's the one interviewing him, and she asked him this question about the raw food diet. And I want to break down his answer because I definitely see some inconsistencies in what he said. So here we go.
This is from Kathleen. She would like to know what your thoughts are about eating raw and juicing instead of eating cooked food.
Well, so here we have Mr. McDougall and his wife. And so the question was a two-part question. One was about juicing, and then one was about raw versus cooked food. So the two different questions. But to start off with the juicing question, juicing is a tremendous benefit to the body. Juicing will help tremendously in getting the nutrients needed to the body much quicker and into the blood much quicker. And I always say we should all do green vegetable juice every single day. And what that means is a juice that has as its base leafy green vegetables. most people do not eat enough leafy green vegetables, and the people that do eat leafy green vegetables, they're not taking full advantage of getting the nutrients they need because they're either cooking them or they're doing something which is, it just makes it harder to get. You get a lot of fiber, and you can get the nutrients out of the raw vegetables, but when you juice them, you just get them so much more efficiently. And as for straight up fruit juicing, what it would do is it will eliminate the slowing down of the sugars getting to the system, and can be an issue with sugar going into the system too quickly. So I'm giving you this information before Mr. McDougall, Dr. McDougall talks, but basically there can be a problem with juicing straight up fruit juice all the time. But if you want to add some fruit to sweeten up your green vegetable juice, that's wonderful. Celery and leafy greens are going to wonderful foods to balance out the sugars in high fruits, in fruits, the high sugars in fruits. When you just juice them, then they're just easily accessible into the bloodstream. But the celery will dilute it, and also the greens. Majority of your juice would make juicing absolutely wonderful and perfect. And as well, juicing, a lot of it depends on the type of juicer you're using. They have the cheap juices you can get at Walmart, and then they have the really high-end juices that the difference is cutting the food versus squeezing the food. So this question, I think, needs more than just a straight-up answer, but I want to play what this Dr. McDougall said about it, and then we'll look at what he had to say about raw food.
Juicing, when you juice something, what you do is you hit it 1,000 times with a steel blade. You don't make fruits or vegetables healthier by disrupting everything in them. What happens when you eat disrupted fruits?
So he's talking about the centrifugal juicers that are high-speed juicers, and it's different than the juicers that squeeze, which is a much different type of juicer. So I just want you to know that that's what he's talking about.
Vegetables is the body responds differently. But first of all, I've got to qualify, but it ain't a big deal for most of us because, good grief, the body's strong. So don't let this discourage you from eating fruits and vegetables, but juices, fruits and vegetable juices, if you like them. But they're not better than the fruit or vegetable. For example, in work by a guy named Heaton that was published in about 1978. What he did is he took subjects and he put a needle in their arm so they could take blood from them at frequent intervals. And what he did is he measured the insulin in the blood and the blood sugar. He fed these people, he fed them whole apples to start out with. And he looked at the blood sugar and it went up a little bit, and then it went down a little bit, and the insulin levels went up just a tiny bit. Then he took the apple with the stems, peels, seeds, everything, threw it in a blender and made apple sauce out of it. And what he found is the blood sugar went up about the same as with the whole apple, but it went down dramatically, and the insulin levels went up much higher. And then he took and separated the pulp from the applesauce, and he made apple juice, and the blood sugar went up, but it went a dramatic drop, hypoglycemic, and the insulin levels went way high. So that's what happens when you damage the food. But again, like I say, you can put up.
Well, he called it damaging the food. And again, this is a great testimonial of how wonderful juicing works, this test. He's trying to use it to say it doesn't improve the digestion or anything else when you juice it, or even in his case, blending it, as he suggested with the applesauce. But that's why I say if we're doing just fruit alone, whole fruit alone is its best. You're getting the skin, you're getting the fiber, you're getting everything. It balances out the sugars perfectly. But when you're juicing that, if you just juice it straight up, yes, it can create problems for people that have already sugar-related issues. But it's just a testament, because when you do green juices, the same thing, it gets into the nutrition into the body that much quicker as well. So juicing is wonderful if you do it the right way as well. And let's continue to hear what he has to say.
Up with T-bone steaks and gallons of ice cream, and you have an amazing body that you live in. A little juice ain't going to hurt it unless you're dealing with problems like hypoglycemia, or high triglycerides. You damage the food and the triglycerides go higher. So,
But you have to also,
So he's talking about juicing's not going to hurt the body unless it's a straight up fruit juice and it's done too often. But the question isn't about will it hurt the body. The question is what's the benefit of the juicing? And is it better than just not eating, than eating the whole food? And with fruits, I guess I'm in agreement with him that it's not better. But if you're mixing the fruits with the vegetables and the celery, then I think it's much more efficiently getting in the body. We need the fiber in food, but the juicing has its place. And I think if you're drinking the juice right away after juicing it or vacuum sealing it or to preserve it, I think it has a tremendous benefit to health. And I think that is the form of medicine we need. So for anyone that wants to prevent a disease or is suffering from disease, get a juicer and make green-based vegetable juices, leafy green-based vegetable juices. And I think that's one of the best medicines we have today. Let thy food be thy medicine to heal us. Let's go on and continue to hear what he has to say about the raw foods.
answer the rest of the question,
what's
which is a raw diet.
oh, right. Okay, that's a whole other subject. I mean, how can you eat a raw starch-based diet? Raw brown rice, not going to work. Raw beans, no, don't think you're going to do that one. How about raw potatoes? Well, maybe. I hear people can eat raw potatoes. How about raw sweet potatoes? Never heard of people eating raw sweet potatoes.
Now, he's talking about a raw or a starch-based diet to begin with. And from my studies, a starch-based diet is not the ideal diet to be with. See, a lot of vegans, like this author here, will suggest eating a lot of grains and starchy root vegetables and just starchy foods in general. But starches are not needed if you're doing this a different way. You see, you got to get your energy from somewhere. And it's going to come from starch or sugar. And the world, in the main part of the world today, they get it from processed sugar, the high corn syrup, high fructose corn syrup, or some other type of white sugar or something else. And the starches, the vegan or a lot of the vegetarian and microbiotic people, you say, oh no, you get it from the starches. And that's creating that problem as well. But the answer is to do the raw vegan diet. And I guess it's not a question, so what's this the answer to? But the answer in general, what these people aren't considering is to get the best of the best, is to a raw vegan diet with the fruits, because the fruit sugar is not the same as the high fructose corn syrup. So there are some people that suggest, oh, we should never eat sugar in any form, including fruit, because it's really bad for the body, and it creates so many sugar-related issues. But all those studies that show that were based on the high glucose corn syrup. It wasn't based on eating straight-up sugar in a whole form. It wasn't based on that. And this is the problem that a lot of people have when they avoid fruit. They think fruit's the enemy or something, and fruits has bad food is bad because of the sugar. If it's in its whole form, it's completely different than what these tests are being done and what people are saying. So the thing is, if you want to be on a 100% raw vegan diet, you have a choice. Where are you going to get your energy from? Where are you going to get this from? And it's either going to be from the sugar or the starch. And like this man is saying here, you cannot get it. You can't eat many of the foods raw that are starchy, like he's mentioning, the potatoes and things like this. So that leaves it up to 2 points. You got to have some fruit or some starches. So if you try to do the raw vegan diet and you're not doing grains, or you're not doing any of these starchy fruits or starchy vegetables, but you are doing some whole fruit, you'll be successful. That's what I've been doing over the years. But to try to do the raw vegan diet 100% without including any fruit, you're going to end up going back to cooked food. You're going to start eating bread or something else. But you don't have to be on starch. That's the choice, but there's many issues with starch. So I think that the best form would be the whole fruits. And so the whole fruits and the leafy green vegetables, that's pretty much what you need. So let's see what else he has to say here.
The human diet is a cooked food diet.
See, it's surprising, it's not true, and it's sad that he would say this. Look, I have no problem if people want to eat cooked food. Even people that are sick, if they want to eat cooked food. I don't have an issue with that, if that's their choice. But this man is lying to say that human diet is a cooked food diet, because we were designed, first of all, even though we can do something doesn't mean it's for us. We can eat meat, but it's not the way we were designed. We were designed to be frugivores. We were designed to eat fruits and herbs, or herbivores. That's what we were designed, frugivores and herbivores, in its raw state. And what we have in our mouth is an enzyme to break down the food starting in your mouth, and you also have teeth to chew the food. The problem is today, people aren't paying attention to what they're doing, and they're not chewing the food. They're not mixing up with their saliva, and it's creating this big problem. But for this man to say that the human diet is a cooked food diet is absolutely not true, because it's not the design of our diet. We can get away with it, but there are definitely negative impacts of eating cooked food that you won't experience if you're doing the raw food diet the correct way.
All right. Richard Wrangham. Yeah. He's from, I think, Dartmouth. We had him as a guest speaker. He wrote a book called Catching Fire. And he explained that 1 million years ago, the primate harnessed fire, which gave us an opportunity to cook the food. When food is cooked, it releases more energy, more calories. It's more digestible. And so it was the ability to cook the food to get enough sugar. Okay, that's what fuels the brain, is sugar, for the development of the brain that the human being has. We have a brain 3 times the size of a chimpanzee. So cooked food was required for us to make the transition from a lesser primate to Homo sapien.
See, so now there are advantages to cooking food. If you're living in a colder climate, if you want to have some steamed vegetables, there's different methods of cooking. So you got to consider these different methods. Some are healthier than others. Some are worse than others. But what he's saying now is not true, because he's suggesting that anyone that doesn't eat cooked food would have these shortcomings. And that's not the case. Let's hear what he has to say.
And so much of the diet is difficult to eat, if not impossible, except when you get into some green and yellow vegetables and some fruits, of course.
So he just suggested, and I admit there aren't many raw vegans around the world that have been doing this long term, 100%. I'm one of them. I know a lot of people that have went away and left it. And that's them. Somebody might watch and say, yeah, because it was too hard for them, or because something. It's easy for me. It is easy for me. I do this with no problem. And, you know, it's definitely not impossible to do, because I'm doing this. And some people say, oh, you're making it up, you're lying. I'm not lying. I eat this way. I've been doing it for a long time.
But this is a starch-based diet. You're going to have a tough time. People who follow raw food diets. Well, let me tell you, no, I don't know whether I should tell you this, but let me tell you about my experience with raw food diets. We got to this place in, was it Tiburon, California? With
I think it was Larkspur. But
Larkspur.
close.
You remember the name of it?
Roxanne's?
Roxanne's, okay. I couldn't afford to go there.
So Roxanne's was a raw food restaurant. I don't know if they're still around, in California. And he's going to get into the story now about how much he paid for the raw food. Now understand, I enjoy a raw food restaurant, but I hardly go to a raw food restaurant. A raw food restaurant, just like anything, if you're eating a standard American diet, if you're eating steak, you can get a hamburger or go to a steakhouse and get an expensive steak. It's the same thing with raw foods. I will not pay the price raw food restaurants charge for the most part. They're extremely expensive for what I could make at home myself very cheaply. I would submit to you that the raw vegan diet is the cheapest or least expensive way to eat if you do it the right way. I spend very little money on my food bill. And I can go and buy durians through the mail for $50, or I could buy fruit online for really expensive. I can go to raw food restaurants and it would be expensive, but I keep it simple. And I also grow a good amount of my food. But he's going to share his story about how raw food is too expensive. And remember, there are some restaurants that are more expensive than others. This was a high-end restaurant. But you can go get raw tacos at a vegan restaurant, and it's not going to be the prices he's talking about. So for him to suggest, and again, he said it was his experience. So who's to argue with someone's experience, right? But his experience just obviously wasn't wide enough or long enough to have a success story to it. But this is a story that he says, but then he puts a statement on it that raw food's too expensive. And he already says that it's almost impossible to do. So let's hear.
But one of our participants decided to reward Mary and I by a trip to Roxanne's for raw food, and ended up costing $500 for the four of us. So it was a very expensive place. Well, Roxanne served was it lasagna?
So $500 for four people, $500 for any amount of people is an expensive food bill when you go into a restaurant. That's $125 for one person. So that is a lot, very expensive, almost double what you would think when you're going out to a restaurant, almost triple, because you think the average person can go to a restaurant and maybe expect to spend, I would think off the top of my head, maybe $25 per person. If you're by yourself, you eat a meal, maybe it's $25. If you order something really exciting, maybe $40. But $120 per person, that's crazy. I've been to a lot of raw food restaurants, and maybe only one other restaurant that I've been to where they would charge something that amount. The rest, four people can go to a raw food restaurant. Okay, look, there's a vegan restaurant near my house, and four people would probably be, if each meal is $20, that's $80 and a tip. So $100 for four people. Maybe even $120 if they want to get dessert. But let's hear the rest.
I got.
Yeah, it was a lasagna.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you got something else, and the other people got something else. But anyway, they brought them out on regular sized plates with this tiny little bit of food. And it had to be a tiny little bit of food otherwise, because it was made of nuts and ground nuts and, maybe some soy, and what else would be raw?
There definitely wasn't any soy in there. It was raw. And yeah, the raw food recipes aren't the best thing to eat all the time. They're a nice little treat, but he's suggesting there's soy in there, and he doesn't even know what raw food recipes here, but he had a raw lasagna.
Oh, they used cashews.
Yeah.
And so everything.
It was so high in calories. If you did anything more than put a little tiny, it was about the size of four postage stamps. That somebody would say, well, every one of your meals is like 800 calories if you gave the size of food that I eat on a plate. So anyways, we had this meal, and my host asked me how I enjoyed dinner. And I said, well, that's barely enough food to get me to Taco Bell. I guess everybody laughed.
Nobody quite gets your sense of humor. I'm sorry to tell you.
Anyway, the human diet is a cooked food diet. All right. If you want to lose more weight, then raw food will help you because it's less digestible. But you're certainly not going to miss anything in terms of nutrients or health promotion by eating cooked food. It does not destroy the food, the nutrients. If it does to any extent at all, it's not enough to cause any deficiency ever. It's a cooked food diet.
So I completely disagree with him here. First, he says raw foods aren't digestible, they're harder to digest. That depends what you're eating. Yes, a raw food lasagna is pretty hard to digest. It's a miscombined food with many nuts and just a whole bunch of other ingredients. It's not easy to digest raw food recipes. However, there's nothing easier to digest on the planet than leafy greens and fresh fruits. Nothing will digest quicker and easier than that. Leafy greens and fresh fruits. And he keeps saying that a cooked food diet is the diet for man. That's the diet man's choosing to eat. But I've been eating for almost 30 years now exclusively raw, uncooked food. And I would consider myself thriving. And I want to show you just the ignorance when it comes to the raw food diet. So after this, about cooked food and the raw food diet and cooked food and what people are saying and what people think about this. Now, this article is from 2017. There's a lot more information out about now, but even back then, there was a lot of information. And I was still a raw foodist. So this is about 5 years ago, 6 years ago. This is maybe 23 or 24 years eating 100% raw food diet when this article came out. 8 things to consider before trying a raw food diet. Is it really worth it? So let's go here and see what they have to say about this. So this comes from this chef here, Naomi Mead. She is the nutritional therapist. A nutritional therapist. Somebody who's a nutritional therapist. Isn't that interesting? Helping people with their diets, supposedly. Let me clarify that up a little here. Okay, so this nutritional therapist, let's see what she had to say here about raw food. So she says, she goes on about let me fix this here. Eating raw foods and what it means. What does the raw food diet involve? So it says, I'll lower this to get the whole thing here. The theory behind raw food is that it's packed, so it explains her so-called or the so-called theory about raw foods and stuff. And it says some followers have add raw unpasteurized milk, cheese, honey. I'm raw vegan. I'm not adding that. I'm open to doing honey, and I've done honey over the years, but no animal products. Okay. What are the benefits of the raw food diet? And she says, there are certainly some benefits of a diet by placing the emphasis on your plant food and putting a ban on cooking. Your diet becomes full of fruit and vegetables, the richest source of valuable nutrients. The richest source of, and that's the last thing she gets correct in this article. Full of fruits and vegetables, the richest source of valuable nutrients. And she says, eating raw foods encourages the consumption of foods in their most unprocessed form. Well, that depends on the way you're going to eat the raw foods. Again, if you eat them whole, yes, that will, and that'll encourage it. That's great. So that's another positive thing she said. And from a weight loss viewpoint, eating more raw foods has been shown to be beneficial, possibly due to the fact that raw foods are harder to digest. Raw fruits are not harder to digest. And then harder to digest than what? Nobody's going to tell me that watermelon is harder to digest than steak. Or apples harder to digest than a hot dog. So her reasoning of why the water is, the people lose weight in raw food diet is not right. It's because you're not consuming your body with high-fat foods and high-processed sugar foods. And, and mostly if you're interested in your diet, you're probably doing some exercise if you switch to eating healthier. But the average food is just absolutely destroying people. But raw foods is so much better. But this nutritional therapist is going to give people warnings why the raw foods don't work. So she says, particularly for vitamins B12, D, selenium, iron, zinc, and omega-3 fatty acids. Now, I've been eating a raw vegan diet for a long time and monitor my blood work. I do take a B12 supplement. As for everything else she said, I got no issues with selenium, iron, zinc. And as for the omega fatty 3 acids, there's a lot of controversy over what we truly need and the balance what we need it in. Mine, compared to the average person in this world, would be on the lower side, but I have no effects or anything wrong with omega fatty 3 acids and vitamin B12, homocysteine, and all these things are fine. Vitamin D, and this person's not a dietitian, so she would leave out vitamin K2, which is something that I supplement, and I think everyone should if you're on a raw diet, a vegetarian diet, or not. But very few people ever suffer from vitamin B12 deficiency on a high level, because most people get it from one way or another from the diet they're eating, but it really doesn't even come from the diet as much as it comes from just the bacteria, and this is going to make up the vitamin B12. But I take a vitamin B12 supplement, and I get the vitamin B12 that I need. And, so there's nothing wrong with taking a supplement here, but, it could be at risk for nutritional deficiencies. I would suggest if you looked at all the people around the world that are eating a particular diet, I wouldn't even suggest it. It's a fact that the majority of people out there that have nutritional deficiencies are people that are not eating a raw diet or even a vegan diet. Now, on the other side of that, it's because that's most people. So, of course, you're going to have more people with deficiencies that aren't eating raw. But when you look at it numbers-wise, what percent? So if there's only 10 people eating raw versus 1,000 people eating cooked, what percent of those people have deficiencies? And I would still suggest more people that are eating the standard American diet on the scales of millions of people. But if you narrow it down to percent, would have more deficiencies than a small few amount of people that are eating the raw diet. She goes on to say here, or suggest, some cooked foods are more nutritious when cooked. And she uses tomatoes as an example. Yes, some foods you don't even want to eat raw because they're poisonous to the body. You got to cook them to make them edible. But we got to look at the full story. So when you look at, she says, cooked tomatoes increase the bioavailability of the powerful antioxidant lycopene. But she didn't say this, that cooked tomatoes are one of the most acidic foods on the planet. So, we need to think about these things. So, there are some foods in certain situations, like root vegetables and other things, that might be often more digestible if you eat them in a cooked form. And if you're living in a colder environment and having a warm foods like steamed vegetables might be better, or soup or something. There are some situations where cooked food has a tremendous benefit over raw food. Like I said, some foods you can't eat unless they're cooked because it releases the poisons in these foods and the gas when they're cooked. But in the opposite effect of that, you're eliminating the benefits of the food, which is when you eat it raw, you get the enzymes. And we're going to talk about that next. But this one says limited choice. Eating only raw foods will limit the food you eat in your diet, and you may struggle to source them all. So as for the struggle to source them all, here in 2023, I don't think there's any struggle getting any food in the world. You can go to the computer and press 2 buttons and have it on your desk the next day. But you can also grow it and have it. In the almost 30 years I've been eating a raw vegan diet, I've in the last 20 years, haven't had an issue sourcing what I needed to get. Definitely hadn't had a struggle. And is my food limiting? Yeah, I'm limiting the things that are going to create me issues. So social occasions will be especially tricky. I don't have issues with social occasions, and I often talk about that and give people information about how to deal with eating different, and not just raw, but eating different than others in these situations. And then she wrote, the prep work required for a raw food diet can be extensive. I'm glad she said can be. So could it be for any diet? It can be, but is it? So when I go and I get a banana and spinach and I eat that, there's no food you can cook, even in a microwave oven, that's going to be faster than that. So these are just can be and reasons, and may cause digestive issues. She said eating a raw plant diet can put the digestive system under a lot of strain, especially conditions such as IBS and IBD. Whenever we're talking about certain conditions, especially digestive order, we definitely got to take a closer look at a diet. I do not, with inflammatory bowel disease, I do not put people with inflammatory bowel disease on a whole raw food diet because their body isn't in a position to digest the fiber at that moment. However, when they get off and when they get better and they're off their issue, then they can go to whole foods again. But even in this situation, there's blended and there's raw. There's blended and there's juicing. So both of those will take a lot of the strain that eating whole raw foods will put on the body if a person has a certain condition. But as for a healthy person and digestion, the raw foods are going to be the easiest foods to digest because, and we're going to look here in number 5, she says most plants' enzymes are destroyed by the stomach acid anyway. This is a misnomer or something she doesn't understand here. It says raw food advocates claim cooking kills valuable plant enzymes that are required for digestion. It does. It does. She's in reality, these plant enzymes have no identifiable benefits because our bodies make their own digestive enzymes. Guess what your body doesn't have to do if it's in the food? Work harder to make those same digestive enzymes. If your body has all that in the food, your body doesn't have to work harder, and your body will produce some enzymes. There's even an enzyme in your saliva when you start mixing the food down. But the plant enzymes in the raw food are going to break down the food and help the food be more digestible. And then she says some highly nutritious foods can't be eaten raw. These include grains, beans, and lentils, and sprouted form. Well, the greatest way to eat your food is in a sprouted form. That makes it living, raw living foods. I eat lentils all the time in a sprouted form. I eat beans all the time in a sprouted form. She talks about it like something negative. You want your food to be in a sprouted form. That's a great thing. Sprouted and fermented food, some of the best food you can eat. So that's not a negative thing. And it's and as for nutritious foods, if they can't be eaten raw, that's our Creator's way of telling us maybe you shouldn't be eating that if you got to do something to it to eat it. And then she talks about food hygiene. When you eat things raw, the risk of food poisoning is higher. Well, me growing my vegetables or going to the store buying my vegetables versus eating meat that says it's prepared the right way, I have a less chance of getting food poisoning from eating raw fruits and vegetables than the people that are going to the supermarket and buying meat. And all the outbreaks that come from the animals. So I think your hygiene needs to be definitely diligent when you're eating everything. But from a meat standpoint, I mean, if I'm eating meat, I'm finding out where it came from, who it came from, when it came from them, and I'll probably get my own animals, eat it myself. I'm not going to do that, but I'm just saying most people are so ignorant or give a blind eye to all these important factors when it comes to food poisoning. And then they want to say, well, if you're eating fruits and vegetables, it can have an issue with food poisoning. Well, maybe in some countries here, but if you're growing in your own backyard, you live in the United States, you shouldn't have any issue with that. And she wrote, food is more than the sum of its nutrients. It's important that food is enjoyed and should not only be something that is done for health. Cooking can help develop flavors and aromas. I, being a raw food chef, I, being somebody who enjoys the different exotic fruits of the world, who grows many of them and eats many of them, have such more palatable taste buds to taste foods that most people can't even taste. I have trees in my yard with like 50 to 60 different varieties of mangoes and bananas and all these other different foods. So is a non-raw food diet more exciting or more available than eating raw foods? Not for the system and the life I've created. So I can understand this completely, that the average person that doesn't understand raw foods, the average person that doesn't understand about health and nutrition can be lost when they change their diet to a raw food diet, a living foods diet. It can definitely seem limiting, boring. It could seem dangerous. I get it. I understand that. But when you have examples, or an example right here of somebody who's been doing it a long time and teaching how this works, and people that are going on this way and getting better from illnesses and so on. Look, the hospital's filled with a lot of people. Most of those, if not all of those people, none of them are eating raw foods. So the question is, what's better, raw or not raw? You do have to look at the social ideas behind it. You do have to look at what your goal is, and you also have to look at your situation. But the ideal foods for our body are going to be foods that have the nutrients in them, the enzymes in them, and they're going to be raw, ripe, fresh, and organic. The less processed your food is, the better off it's going to be. And the most common way food is processed is through heating it or cooking it. So you're downgrading once you start cooking the food for most foods on the planet. And raw is the longest tried and best food for our bodies. And I tell everyone, though, you don't have to eat all raw. It depends what your goal is. But you could eat, everyone should be eating at least 75% to 80% of raw fruits and vegetables in their diet. If they want to do that cooked, if they want to do that raw, that's up to them. But everyone should have at least that much in their diet. But again, what I have found here in 2023 is the best foods for our body are raw, ripe, fresh, organic fruits, vegetables, and nuts and seeds if consumed the right way. And I dispute everything that Dr. McDougall had to say about raw food, and also this article, which is so misleading. And if anyone's interested in learning about raw, check out all my videos. I have thousands of videos online of about raw foods and the benefits it gives. And I'm happy to answer questions. Just post questions below the video. And that's it. Raw food works. Raw food works. And I'm a living example of that. So thank you for watching, everybody. If you've been eating a raw food diet for a good amount of time, put your experience and your comments and questions below. And even if you've got off the raw vegan diet and you want to discuss it, I'm happy to comment on that if you'd like. Until then, everybody, have a great day. And thanks for watching and have a great raw life.
Nature's wealth, good for your health. This is the Raw Life Health Show. Raw Life, brighten up your life.